So the first thing I'm going to do is pick a draft paper or draw up my own draft and kind of plan out the title of my board game and then start to draw out the design that I want my board game to have. So my theme is lost. So my farm animals get lost in the city and then they try to make their way back to the farm. So I'm just following my theme and drawing designs in the background and on my actual board game to get the purpose of my theme across. So I decided to go with a pattern of every 2 squares has some sort of challenge. So I'm going to draw the first few challenges related to the city and the last few challenges related to getting back to the farm. And then they have to either pass or do each challenge as they play through the board game. So I've got somewhat of an idea of what I want. So I'm just going to plan out the colors. I don't have to color this whole thing in, just getting a nice plan of the colors that I want to use and making sure that I've practiced all of my drawings on my draft paper before I start on my final paper. I'm also going to kind of plan out the pieces that I need on here, just making sure I know how many players are playing and any other pieces that I will need. Now on my board game, starting with my title, where I want my title to go, and then drawing out a path to match my draft. Now it's not perfect, and that's okay. It's a little wider in some areas, but I kind of liked how goofy it looked. So then I'm going to add the same amount of spaces that I had in my draft to my final paper and erase those pencil lines that are left sticking out. And I just did all that with a normal Sharpie and then planning out those designs that I have on my draft as well, starting with the start and the end pictures of the city and the farm, and then going in with each square that has a different task. Now again, I would probably draw things with a pencil first to make sure I don't make any mistakes, but since you did plan this out in your draft already, you should have a good idea of what you are doing. And I did add a few extra background details that were not in my draft because once I made it to my board, it looked a little plain. So now I'm just going in with colors, starting with my Sharpie and adding in those bright details and then using coloring pencils to fill in the bigger spaces. And now once that is all colored, our next step is to start to design and create our pieces. So for our pieces, we're using Model Magic to mold whatever pieces we need. And I planned for 4 players and needing a dice. So a dice is very easy to make. You can see me squeezing each side down to make a cube. And then with my pieces, since these are farm animals, I'm going to try and mold out 4 different farm animals. So just pinching and squeezing until I have the shape that I want. I think this one is a cow, and I'm just going to continue to pinch and squeeze until it looks how I want it to look. Now you could go with simple shapes or those simple playing pieces that you see in a lot of board games. But since mine is about farm animals, I felt like I needed to make some real farm animals. Now, if you're going to do anything other than dice with your board game, if you're going to make cards, we obviously won't make cards with Model Magic, but I would advise maybe figuring out a way to incorporate a dice into your board game since it's a more simple piece to make. And now with your playing pieces, remember you can only have a 2, 3, or 4 person game, so you're only making 2, 3, or 4 player pieces. And now I'm making a little chicken. And again, just pinching and squeezing in all different directions until I have the shape that I want. And it looks like I did this very fast, but it was a little time consuming. It didn't take me as short of amount of time as it seemed. Now, these did dry for a day, and then I went back in and added my dice dots. So 1 dot all the way to 6 dots, and then coloring each of my playing pieces with Sharpie. Now, these Sharpies will dry eventually, but on the Model Magic, it takes them a little bit to dry. So just be careful with your fingers. And I probably wouldn't place them on your drawing board like I've been doing in this video, because I did leave a few marks on my board from where the Sharpie had kind of rubbed off of my pieces. So I would not advise doing your coloring on your board like I'm doing right now. So I'm just using my bright Sharpies to color each playing piece, Since mine are animals, they're all going to look a little different. Coloring them first with the base color, letting them dry for a few seconds, and then I'll go back in and add a few eyeballs to each playing piece. Again, your playing pieces will probably look a lot different than mine. You could do multiple colors, especially if they're not supposed to be anything. If they're just playing pieces that travel across the board, you could color them with patterns. But I definitely wouldn't leave them white unless you want your dice to stay white like mine is staying white, and then I had different colored dots. But I would definitely add some color to each piece.